As part of the U.S. government's federal data strategy, agencies are working hard to transform data insights into action and make data more accessible and valuable to a broader circle of users. For chief data officers and IT leaders, that involves taking numerous steps to advance the collection and management of data, both at rest and in motion, as well as the additional steps to translate all that into more usable and more valuable assets for constituents. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and here to talk a little bit more about that today are Beth Puchek, Chief Data Officer at the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, a component of the Department of Homeland Security, and Joshua Phillips, Digital Modernization Chief Data Officer within the Office of the CTO at ICF. Joshua and Beth, thank you so much for joining us. And Beth, I kind of like to start out by asking you to maybe give us a sense for how are agencies like yours navigating right now around some of these data-driven challenges to meet mission objectives and things like managing and sharing data across multiple domains.
Sure, thanks, Wyatt. At USCIS, data is everybody's job. Nobody owns it. So the most important thing we can do is to promote that mindset and to help everyone understand the importance of sharing data across our domains, across our lines of business. One of the ways that we've seen to really solidify that in people's minds is through the use of an enterprise data strategy. So 4 years ago, we published our first data strategy, and 3 years later, we just finished our update, our revision to that. And it's a really great opportunity for us to all collectively synchronize around the data management challenges that we have and the ultimate vision that we have for utilizing our data as an asset collectively.
And Joshua, I'm curious, you have a kind of a broader perspective across the federal government. What else are you seeing that agencies are doing to really try to, again, manage and share data when they're having to deal with multiple domains?
Sure. Well, I think it's important to consider data a mission critical product in its own right, rather than thinking of only the reports or visualizations or tools that use that data. So that product thinking helps ensure that the proper attention to data quality and interoperability is applied and maintained over time. So there's a technique called domain-driven design that's really proven itself in the delivery of software components. And then in the context of data analytics, I think it helps us identify those data products. So this domain-driven data as a product perspective helps inform interoperability standards as well as data warehouse design to enable that sharing of sharing and analysis across domains. The Open Data Act and the adoption of open data standards and RESTful APIs, those have been really valuable in making data available for secondary use. But to support these more rapid collaborations among agencies and cross-domain analytics, I think that other data access patterns are required, such as event-based streaming, bulk transfer mechanisms, and federated data lakes. Interoperability standards and technology solutions now exist for implementing these kinds of data access patterns. So, with these data as a product principles and modern data access mechanisms, agencies, I think, can more readily now, they're more able to meet these mission objectives, such as increasing data quality so that they can enable these more forward-looking approaches and applying ML techniques to their data, or coordinating responses to these rapidly evolving emergencies like we experienced with COVID-19.
Well, I'd like to dive a little deeper and talk about some best data management practices, things like whether to federate data or centralize storing data. I'd be curious, how do you see best data management practices evolving? And in particular, how can it help, propel missions versus holding them back if best practices aren't put in place? Beth, maybe you could start with that.
Sure. Well, I think Joshua hit on some really great points on exactly that concept. Using data as a product so that we are clear on the importance of interoperability across domains. That's something that has really yielded some benefits in my agency. Our Chief Information Officer has promoted the domain-driven design concept here, and it really has helped us as we synchronize our data in our data lake in the cloud, and made it really available to help support, again, not just those reports and statistics and dashboards, but really helping to drive the mission. We're able to bring data together to make our processes a lot more efficient, so that we're making sure that our human workforce is spending time on work that only humans can do.
And Josh, your additional thoughts on that topic?
Sure. I think it's useful to consider the trade-offs between federated versus centralized data management functions, rather than selecting between what seem to be dichotomous models. So we know that on the one hand, coordination is required to ensure consistent enforcement of access controls and data standards. But on the other hand, we know that these centralized data management teams and centralized compute resources tend not to scale well in larger organizations. So I think organizations benefit from empowering domain owners or lines of business to deliver their data as a high quality product to the enterprise in a federated fashion. But these data owners also need to be enabled through an enterprise level suite of automated and self-service tools. So in practice, this might involve defining an automated CI/CD or data ops pipeline for delivering data marts to a federated data lakehouse, where these pipelines ensure that data quality standards and access controls are enforced consistently across the enterprise. In my experience, this federated approach has helped organizations propel their missions by increasing the velocity of their teams. So an example that I like to point to is at the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services within the Quality Payment Program. So with the appropriate suite of automated and self-service tools, that line of business was able to reduce their policy simulation time by some 99%. And this really enabled the policy analysis team to evaluate more potential policy changes that better guide their program toward achieving its goals.
Well, Beth, I'd love to ask you this next question, and that revolves around the cloud. So I'm curious, how is the cloud helping to not only create but scale a cohesive data management environment that supports, a wide range of data workloads?
Again, Joshua really teed this one up nicely for me, but I think having both that right mix of a federated approach to data management, but also having a centralized offering of the tools of the governance is really what makes that possible and accelerates our ability to deliver really anything. We've had our data in the cloud for years and have been continuously porting more and more into it. And it's really been a critical enabler for us to be able to perform our mission just faster. The one area where I'd love to see the federal government continue to grow is having every agency be in the cloud so that we can share our data more seamlessly. We do a lot of sending back and forth. We do share it, but it's how we share it that can get better through the use of these cloud-based technologies, and building a data mesh that will help us in times of crisis, like Operation Allies Welcome, Uniting for Ukraine, and many more crises that I'm sure have yet to come.
And Joshua, what else are you seeing in the way that the cloud is really enabling chief data officers, if you will, to really get a better handle on how they manage all the data they're being asked to manage?
Yeah, well, building on what Beth was saying, the cloud is enabling these scenarios that weren't previously practical, and especially in the data analytics world. And I think the some of the key enablers here are the ability to separate storage from compute, and then to allocate computing resources on demand. So, for example, in the past, analytic tools to support, let's say, healthcare fraud detection or perform regulatory surveys, they were focused on looking at individual providers. But in order for agencies to take this more proactive and forward-looking approach, they need to be able to analyze and look across beneficiaries and providers, and identify trends and patterns. So these kinds of scenarios, these forward-looking scenarios, require access to more data and more compute resources. And in addition to that, in order to innovate, data scientists need to be able to rapidly explore these large data sets and experiment with various machine learning algorithms. So the cloud enables this kind of innovative behavior by empowering these kinds of users to provision their compute resources on demand and then discard them when they're finished.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then lastly, I'd like to just touch on the growing importance of the chief data officer in federal agencies. It's a relatively new title, even if the role's been around for a while. Beth, talk to me a little about how would you describe the impact that CDOs are having either in your agency or your peers in other agencies in developing a common governance and a data management framework to support unified data access across multiple domains?
I think the most important role that I play to do that is really to bring awareness to the importance of this topic, the importance of governance and management. Because in order to take advantage of all of these cloud-based technologies, more sophisticated analytics that these brilliant data scientists fresh out of school want to be able to perform, we need really strong data management and governance practices in place. We need to have great business rules. We need to have common definitions across our multiple different domains. So we can't have the great visualizations, the tools that make creating insights and making decisions possible without having strong data management practices in place. In DHS, I think we're really fortunate to have this construct of an immigration data community, because Citizenship and Immigration Services isn't the only player in the immigration domain, of course. We've got other components within the department. We also have the Department of Justice, Health and Human Services, the Department of State. So the demonstration of being able to come to common data standards and definitions with these gigantic players proves that it's possible, and really lays the foundation for us to technically share our data in these cloud-to-cloud data meshes in the future much more seamlessly.
Makes a lot of sense. So Joshua, how are you seeing the growing impact that CDOs are having in federal agencies?
Well, I recall seeing in the CDO Data Council reports that many CDOs in various agencies had reported that it was difficult to begin building that momentum toward achieving these larger goals of common governance and unified data access. And so they called out a need for strategies to help build this momentum. I think an important first step is to begin involving line of business users in the analytics process so that they can clearly see how analytics supports their mission. And one way to do this is to provide these self-service tools like dashboards, which clearly support these tactical objectives in the short term, and then help create the appetite and momentum for these longer term strategic initiatives. Another important step is to enable the lines of business to begin delivering their own data as products using good software engineering practices like data ops pipelines. So with these pipelines in place, I think CIOs, CTOs begin to see how data products fit into the software development process in a manner that's analogous to the operational components that they might be more familiar with, like microservices, for example. So by engaging domain owners and IT leadership in this way, I think we can motivate these enterprise level activities like integration of identity providers and entitlement services into technologies like AWS Lake Formation and Databricks Unity Catalog or others that have become available in recent years for applying access controls in a unified way across a federated data lakehouse, for example.
Joshua, I'd love to add to that. You make a really great point about the role of a CDO and promoting a data culture in an organization. And I think that that's the most important thing that I can do as a CDO in CIS is helping the domain owners and really every single person and persona in the agency understand how data relates to their job, because it does. It's everybody's job. Our data strategy has certainly helped to promote that data culture, but things like appropriate, more personalized data literacy training, analytics training to help people, again, understand where data fits in their world and how it can make their jobs better, easier, faster, is certainly something that will accelerate the whole collective moving forward.
That's such a great point. Well, Beth Pucek and Joshua Phillips, thank you so much for taking time to share some of your respective insights on the evolution of the CDO in federal government and why it's so important to agency missions. So thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.